The video that you're about to watch contains important information about your discharge. It also highlights questions that you may want to discuss with the healthcare team as they work with you towards planning your discharge home.
Hi Lena, I'm really glad to hear that you're starting to think about your discharge home from the hospital. It's really important that we talk about things ahead of time so that you know when to expect, and that will help you with your recovery at home.
Hi Susan, thanks for coming in to see me. I am a little scared about going home, and I would like to know what kinds of things I need to worry about or ask.
So there are certain things that we really need to talk about that you need to be aware of. Things like who to call if you have any questions, medications, pain control, signs and symptoms of an infection. And there's also things that you will and won't be able to do or can and can't do when you get home.
Okay, what do you mean by can and can't do?
Well, there may be some limitations to your activity, or you may need to change some lifestyle things when you get home. And those changes may be just temporary as you recover from the illness, or you may need to make some permanent changes. Why don't we go through everything one at a time in more detail, and then you can ask questions as we go. And remember that most of the information that we're going to discuss here is in the information package that you received either during your pre-admission visit or from the doctor's office.
Okay, that's great. So what kind of things do I need to know?
Let's start with talking about why you were in the hospital. It's really important that you know exactly why you were here, and if you had surgery, what the operation was that you had done. So you and your family need to talk about that. When you ask the healthcare team, if you don't understand their explanation, please ask them to repeat it again and explain it differently. Sometimes we tend to forget and use technical terms, so it's okay to remind us to speak in plain English and simpler language.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's start with whatever you want to start with.
Okay, how about medications? They're really important. You may have been started on some new medications when you came into hospital here, or you may well have been on medications before and we've either changed or discontinued those medications. So that's important to talk about. Ask your healthcare team whether or not the medications you were on before should be continued when you do get home. And certainly if you have any questions about your medications, ask to speak with our pharmacist, because they'll come in, they'll go over the medications with you, what they're for, possible side effects. They'll be able to give you written information and that sort of thing, so certainly ask. Do you know if you have any drug coverage?
I'm not too sure what you mean.
Well, certain people have drug coverage through their benefits at work, and that covers the cost of medications. Some people have private insurance for that, or there may be under government drug benefit program. It's important that if you're not sure if you have drug coverage, that you ask to speak with our social worker before you're discharged from the hospital.
Okay, what about pain medications? Because I've been taking a lot of that since I've been here.
Okay, that's really important as well for anybody who's been started on pain medication. Pain control is an extremely important part of your recovery. Certainly ask about your pain medication. You can ask any of the healthcare team. The doctors, nurses, or pharmacists will all be able to explain your pain medication to you, possible side effects, the dosages, and those types of things. Remember, one of the main side effects of pain medication is constipation, so you need to be aware of that and stay on top of that. When the doctors give you the prescriptions for the pain medications, you may want to get them filled at the pharmacy downstairs here before you even leave the hospital. That way you've got your meds ready to go as soon as you get home.
Okay, is pain the only thing I need to worry about when I go home?
Well, no, there's several other things that you need to know about, and what you need to be aware of will be determined by either the surgery that you've had done or the illness that you were hospitalized for. You need to ask the team what specific things you need to be aware of. Let's say you've been in for surgery. We would ask you to monitor your incision for signs and symptoms of an infection. So you need to look for things like redness at the incision, a sudden increase in swelling, if there's a sudden increase in the pain at the incision, if there's any drainage or pus or discharge coming out of it, that's really important. You also need to be aware if you've got a fever, you need to let us know that. And finally, if you start to cough up any yellow or green mucus, that could be indicative that you're starting with a respiratory infection, and we need to know about that as well. Make sure you ask the healthcare team before you leave the hospital what specific things you need to keep an eye on for when you get home.
Okay, and how do I know that there is something going on? When should I start to be concerned?
Well, most people recover fairly easily and smoothly, and problems don't come up, but it is important that you know who to contact should a problem arise. Sometimes they'll ask you to contact the doctor's office directly, and so it's important that you have that number. Sometimes it'll be your family doctor, sometimes it would be like myself, a nurse practitioner, that they would ask you to contact. It's important for you to ask your team who they want you to contact in case there's a problem, and that you know how to reach them.
Okay, now I definitely hope that I don't have any emergencies or concerns when I go home. So how do I avoid any complications from happening?
That's the important thing to talk about as well. When you're ready to go home, there may be certain limitations or restrictions to your activities when you go home. We talk about safety precautions. We want you up and about as much as possible, but there may be some limitations to that. You need to talk to the team about going back to work. Obviously, depending on why you were in the hospital is going to determine how quickly you can go back to work. If you've got a really physical job like a construction worker, a nurse, somebody doing heavy lifting and that type of thing, and you've had surgery, you're going to be off work a lot longer than somebody who's got a desk job. So ask your doctors what limitations there are to you. Remember that if you've had surgery and you've got an incision, there's usually limitations to lifting. We ask you not to lift anything heavier than 10 pounds for about 4 to 6 weeks after surgery. We also don't want you pulling or pushing things, so no shoveling snow, mowing the lawn, those types of things. Now remember that I said that we want you up and about as much as possible. So going out to the store to do the grocery shopping is really important, but we don't want you pushing the heavy grocery cart or to be the one who's carrying the heavy grocery bags back to the car. Okay?